When I was about 13, 14, going to the local park, you had to pass the forest, and they always said Purple Aki lives down there. Growing up, it was a myth. I didn't believe him. I just used to think Purple Aki doesn't exist.
When I was at school here, we'd all joke about him. You'd wonder if he was real. We'd make threats, saying he was going to come and get you. And we'd laugh. We'd be a little bit scared.
And I hear, I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on here? And then I hear it again, I'm thinking, wow, what's going on? So get down a bit further, look round. There's Daniel Garvey in the squat position with Akinwale Arobieke sitting on his shoulders. But what he was doing is, and this is the noncy part of why he does that, every time Danny's there trying to go and stand up, Akin's cock's on his neck. So when I'm screaming at Akin, you fucking dickhead, get off him. What are you doing, you silly twat? Akin's got an hard on.
What's your best muscle? How big are your arms? How big are your arms?
Throughout Liverpool in the northwest of England, people whispered his name in fear. A name that carried with it a mixture of dread, fascination, and disbelief. For decades, stories of a towering man stalking the streets, asking strange and unsettling questions, spread like wildfire. Who was he? And why did his very name send chills down the spine of those that heard it? Akinwale Arobieke, better known as Purple Aki, is one of the most infamous figures in Liverpool's history. A man who blurred the lines between urban legend and real-life predator. His unusual behavior and disturbing encounters with young men made him a notorious figure throughout Merseyside and beyond. Dubbed the Boogeyman by locals, Purple Aki became more than just a man. He became a symbol of fear, a dark tale whispered among friends. But who was the real person behind the myth? This is the story of Akinwale Arobieke and how he became known as Liverpool's Boogeyman. Akinwale Oluwafolajimi Oluwatope Arobieke was born on the 15th of July, 1961, at Crumpsall Hospital in Crumpsall, Lancashire. His mother, a secretarial student of Nigerian descent, faced challenges as a single parent, and the identity of Arobieke's father remains unknown. When he was just 6 months old, he was placed into care and spent part of his childhood in a Barnardo's home in Llandudno, Wales. These early years, marked by separation and instability, shaped a man who would later become a figure of both fascination and fear. Growing up, Arobieke's life followed a path of modest employment. As an adult, he worked as a cleaner in the Mersey tunnels and took on a role as a messenger for Liverpool City Council. Known as a giant of a man, Arobieke stood 6'5" and was heavily muscle-bound, with a commanding presence that made him instantly recognizable. However, it wasn't just his physical appearance that set him apart. It was his unusual and increasingly disturbing predatory behavior. One evening in April, as James Vaughan made his way through Garston, a neighborhood in South Liverpool, he heard a voice call out behind him.
"Do you know if there are any gyms around here?"
Vaughan turned and found himself facing an imposing figure, a man he didn't recognize, standing ominously near an alleyway fence. At 15 or 16, Vaughan was already tall for his age, reaching 6'3", but this man was even larger. Built like a tank and weighing well over 20 stone, his size alone was intimidating. The man moved closer, blocking Vaughan's path, and made an unexpected request.
"Can I feel your muscles? Can I feel your biceps?"
Vaughan, a shy and quiet teenager, was taken aback by the strange question. He was alone, with no one nearby to ask for help. Unsure of what to do, he followed the man's command and flexed his arms. The man's hands gripped his biceps, moving slowly up and down his arms, leaving the teenager feeling uncomfortable and trapped. Later, Vaughan would describe the man's hands as slimy, a sensation that would stick with him for years. But as luck would have it, an opportunity to escape appeared. A stranger walked by on the other side of the street, and Vaughan quickly crossed over, pretending the man was his father. He finally reached the snooker hall, and still shaken, told his friend what had happened. The friend's response was instant and unnerving. "Do you know who that was?" That was Purple Aki. The creep who had just cornered Vaughan wasn't just anyone. He was infamous across Liverpool, a figure known for his obsession with fondling young men's muscles, a legend, and a nightmare that had haunted the city for decades. For years, tales of this boogeyman rippled through Merseyside, taking on a life of their own. The details of each story might differ, but certain elements remained constant. He was enormous, and he had an unsettling obsession with touching and measuring young men's muscles. Parents would warn their children to avoid lingering outside after dark, lest they encounter the towering figure known as Aki. Older siblings would pass down chilling accounts to younger ones, each retelling adding a layer of fear. These stories echoed through playgrounds and schoolyards, growing darker and more exaggerated with each new telling, transforming Purple Aki into a legend that haunted the minds of Liverpool's youth. The stories sounded like a twisted fairy tale, a product of 1980s anxieties surrounding race and sexuality. Even his nickname carried a racially charged implication, suggesting he was so black he's purple. It was as though Aki had been conjured from the collective subconscious of Liverpool, a figure of fear like the Candyman from Liverpool-born Clive Barker's stories. To many, he seemed like an urban legend, something to be whispered about but not taken seriously. Yet there were always people who swore they knew someone, a cousin, a neighbor, who had been cornered by him or had to escape his grasp. And then there were the few who claimed with certainty he wasn't just a myth. There was a real man behind the stories, and his name was Akinwale Arobieke. In the early 1980s, Tony Evans was a young man of 23, working long hours in a warehouse near Liverpool's Albert Docks. His job was tough, hauling heavy bundles of Littlewood's catalogs into lorries day after day. One afternoon, as he climbed a flight of stairs from the loading bay, he heard a voice behind him ask,
Do you lift weights?
Evans turned around, and there he was. A year earlier, Evans had laughed off stories about Aki, told to him by his younger brothers who were regulars at the gym. The tales had seemed outlandish, almost like a joke. But now, facing the man himself, Evans wasn't laughing.
I bet you've got big biceps.
The voice continued softly as a huge hand reached out toward him. Evans shot back a warning, ready to throw this man down the stairs if he didn't back off. The man retreated quietly, disappearing through a door. He hadn't seemed aggressive, but in that moment, the boogeyman became real. Over the next year, Evans saw Aki frequently around the site. He was very deferential, very quiet, spoke very, very softly. He didn't draw attention to himself, unless he wanted to feel your muscles. When he was in the loading bay, he was almost soundless. Some lorry drivers from out of town even let him have a squeeze, much to the amusement of Evans and his co-workers. But not everyone found him entertaining. On a hot July day, Evans stood at the loading bay and saw Aki sprinting toward him, chased by around 20 men wielding pickaxe handles. I'm sure they would have killed him, Evans recalled, watching as Aki scaled a high fence to escape the chasing mob. With the rise of the internet, the rumors surrounding Akinwale Arobieke began to evolve from local whispers to online lore. Newspaper reports of Arobieke's regular court appearances quickly found their way onto message boards and social media, where stories about him spread like wildfire, often embellished beyond recognition. It became difficult to tell where Arobieke the man ended and Aki the myth began. Online, people shared accounts of seeing him around gyms and rugby clubs, adding to the legend. Even seasoned athletes and weightlifters admitted feeling unsettled by his presence. A pattern emerged in the stories. Aki would ask young men to squat while he lay across their backs, facing down, squeezing their quads and calves. Many found these encounters deeply uncomfortable, adding to his sinister reputation. The internet fueled more colorful rumors. Some claimed his father was a high court judge or Nigerian royalty. Others suggested Aki had ties to Liverpool's criminal underworld. One tale circulated widely, that he would give his targets a choice: pop or slash. The supposed options were between being sexually assaulted or having his initials carved into them. The story was completely fabricated, yet it only served to amplify the myth of Purple Aki, blurring the lines between truth and folklore. While many found Akinwale Arobieke intimidating, plenty of others turned him into a figure of dark humor. At the 2008 Glastonbury Festival, someone even brought a banner reading, "Our mate. Purple Aki just gripped us in a portaloo," accompanied by his stern-looking mugshot. 5 years later, at the same festival, a flag appeared with the words, "Purple Aki, the gym pest from the Northwest." Aki's image began popping up in unexpected places, on banners at Liverpool and Everton football games, in songs, cartoons, and memes on YouTube. By June 2012, Merseyside police even had to issue a statement debunking rumors circulating on Twitter that he had died. Aki had gone viral, his myth taking on a life of its own. But behind the mockery and the tall tales lay a much darker reality. Back in the 1980s, one story in particular stood out. A boy who had tragically died on a railway line while running away from Arobieke. But unlike the rumors, this story was not an exaggeration. It was true. Sunday, the 15th of June, 1986, was a bright, bustling day in New Brighton, one of the busiest Merseyside had seen that summer. 16-year-old Gary Kelly had spent the afternoon at the local pool, relaxing with a group of about 15 friends. Recently finished with his O-levels, Gary was athletic and full of promise. Standing 6 feet tall, he was a talented footballer with a house full of trophies from the Eastham and District Junior League and Shaftesbury Boys Club. A devoted Manchester United fan, Gary had been scouted by Newcastle. But his true ambition was to join the police force after completing his A-levels. His parents, Raymond and Pamela, described him as level-headed, intelligent, and driven. For 18 months, he had been dating Elaine Jordan, whose family ran a pub near his home in Birkenhead. That afternoon, as the friends left the pool, someone in the group suddenly shouted, "Aki's here!" At the sight of Akinwale Arobieke, then 25, Gary took off, leaving his friends behind. A court would later hear that Gary had lived in fear of Arobieke, who had harassed him relentlessly, even threatening his life. Prosecutor Rodney Cleven QC described how Gary's once cheerful personality had shifted in recent months. He'd become a boy haunted, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Elaine recalled the disturbing frequency of these encounters. Gary first saw Arobieke hanging around outside his school. Another time, he spotted him waiting outside his front door as he returned home from a visit with her. Arobieke even appeared at the bus stop where Gary's school bus dropped him off. "You'd look round, and he'd be there, standing next to you," Elaine remembers. He could just appear like that. Everyone knew of him. According to Elaine, Arobieke had a disturbing fixation with Gary's muscles. He would make him tense his leg muscles and then grip them, sometimes bending over Gary's back as he squatted to feel his calves. For Gary, these encounters were terrifying. Elaine recalls that kids would mock him, taunting him with, "Aki will get you, and you're Aki's new boy." One day, while waiting at a bus stop, Elaine and Gary found themselves joined by Arobieke, who got on the same bus and followed them. When Elaine confronted him, Aki snapped back, calling her a
Silly cow.
On that fateful Sunday afternoon, when Gary ran from his friends, the judge would later tell the court that he must have had terror in his heart and mind. He tried to hide in New Brighton's railway station, a few hundred yards from the swimming pool. For a short time, he concealed himself on a stationary train, but then began moving toward the ticket barrier. And then, he saw Arobieke again. No one witnessed Gary's final moments, but the court heard that he climbed off the platform and under a train, where he accidentally touched a live rail. Tragically, 750 volts of raw electricity surged through Gary's body. Elaine was at home, soaking in the bath, when she heard shouting outside her window. One of her neighbors was calling to her, saying that something had happened. Moments later, screams filled the air. Gary's father had phoned from the hospital with the devastating news. Gary was gone. Elaine's mother came upstairs to break the news gently, but nothing could soften the blow. Elaine was 3 months pregnant with Gary's child. In May 1987, Akinwale Arobieke was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. The judge described it as one of the most unusual cases he had ever presided over, and he ordered 12 additional charges of indecent assault and assault to remain on file. Gary's father expressed his outrage to the Liverpool Echo, calling the sentence disgraceful. Graffiti soon appeared around the Wirral. R.I.P. Gary Kelly. Arobieke appealed the conviction, and in November 1987, 3 judges ruled that simply being at the station did not constitute an unlawful act. The conviction was overturned, and Purple Aki walked free. Reports later suggested he received £35,000 in compensation in 1989. After his appeal, Akinwale Arobieke seemed to disappear from the public eye. Years passed without any mention of him in local newspapers like the Liverpool Echo or the Daily Post. But as the 1990s wore on, his name began to resurface in whispers and stories. One such story comes from John Yusuf, who now runs USC Gym in Formby, Merseyside. Today, his friends laugh about the incident, turning it into a running joke. But at the time, Yusuf found nothing funny about his encounter with Aki. Back then, Yusuf was 15 and a dedicated weightlifter. He had traveled to Liverpool city centre with a friend to buy protein powder. As they crossed the street, Arobieke bumped into him from behind. Recognizing him as a young weightlifter, Arobieke asked which gym he attended and where he was headed. Then, in a strange turn, he invited Yusuf to come with him to the Crown Court to watch a murder trial. When Yusuf hesitated, Arobieke asked if he was racist. "I'm half Arabic. I'm not racist," Yusuf recalls. But he realized it was a tactic to intimidate him. Reluctantly, Yusuf followed Arobieke into the court building, accompanied by his friend, whom Arobieke completely ignored. Inside, Yusuf found himself led into a small, windowless room, with Aki standing in front of the door.
Take your top off,
He demanded. Yusuf resisted, but Aki insisted, saying,
I'm into bodybuilding. I just want to see.
Forced to comply, Yusuf ended up flexing his muscles and doing bodybuilding poses. Arobieke then commanded him to lift him in a fireman's carry and squat. Yusuf did as he was told, squatting several times with Arobieke's weight on his shoulders. Eventually, he managed to set him down near the door and made a run for it, not looking back. Yusuf tried to put the bizarre encounter behind him and left for a family holiday soon afterward. But upon his return, the nightmare resumed. While standing outside with a friend, he noticed him staring over a fence. There's a big black fella looking over the fence. The man was Purple Aki. That night, at around 10:30, Yusuf was riding his bike home, when, out of nowhere, Arobieke leapt from the bushes and grabbed him. "What the fuck are you doing?" Yusuf shouted. Arobieke replied,
I've come to measure your muscles.
Before Yusuf could react, Aki wrapped a measuring tape around his arms and chest. When he moved to measure his legs, Yusuf broke free and ran. Shaken, Yusuf called the police as soon as he got home. Although no charges were brought against Arobieke for these encounters, the officers immediately recognized the pattern. They knew who he was straight away. In March 1997, the Sunday People ran a sensational headline. 6'5" giant stalks Rugby Super League stars. The story claimed that warnings had been issued to all 12 Super League clubs about Arobieke, describing a 3-year campaign during which he allegedly harassed players, vandalized their cars, and issued violent threats. The paper even reported that he had lifted a 6'17" player onto his shoulder and performed squats. Following the publication, Arobieke filed a libel suit against the newspaper, though it was dropped after just a day and a half in court. This marked the beginning of a series of regular court appearances that would span nearly 2 decades, as Aki's bizarre reputation continued to unfold in the public eye. In the spring of 2000, Kelly Mullaney noticed a strange man lingering around her younger brother near their home in Widnes, Cheshire. The man, Arobieke, would approach local boys, asking if he could feel their muscles and if they worked out at the gym. Concerned for her brother's safety, Mullaney warned Aki to leave him alone or she would call the police. But things soon took a dark turn. Purple Aki showed up at Mullaney's home with what appeared to be a gun, inserting it through the letterbox and shouting threats. Terrified, Mullaney called the police immediately. Police arrived within minutes, and Arobieke was arrested and later charged with making a threat to kill. Though the object was never confirmed to be a gun, he received a 30-month prison sentence at Warrington Crown Court on August 3, 2001. Fearing possible retaliation, Mullaney entered a witness protection program, relocating to a different part of England. Merseyside police subsequently launched an extensive investigation into Akinwale Arobieke, known as Operation Ice. Detectives interviewed 123 people from areas as far-reaching as Newcastle upon Tyne to South Wales, with much of the inquiry focusing on Warrington and St Helens. Operation Ice uncovered a disturbing pattern in Arobieke's behavior. He would approach young men at gyms, sports clubs, and colleges, often asking to feel their muscles or requesting that they squat. In some instances, he instructed them to stand in a scarecrow position with arms extended so he could lift them from behind. He also frequently used a tape measure to take measurements of their calves, thighs, and chests. One of the most alarming aspects of his behavior was the level of detailed research he conducted into the lives of his targets. He seemed to know where they lived, details about their families, and even their routines. The parents of one young man from St. Helens, deeply unsettled by his persistence, eventually entered witness protection to escape his attention. In a later court hearing, officers revealed that a search of Arobieke's home had uncovered photos of muscular young men, along with a stalker's manual, filled with the contact information and personal details of his victims. Handwritten notes contained measurements of body parts, providing a chilling insight into the lengths he went to track and document those he targeted. On Monday, 15th December 2003, Akinwale Arobieke was sentenced to 6 years in prison at Preston Crown Court, after pleading guilty to 15 counts of harassment and 1 count of witness intimidation. An additional 61 charges, mainly for indecent assault, were left on file. The judge also issued 31 restraining orders, prohibiting Arobieke from contacting any of the young men named in the case file. During sentencing, Judge Edward Slinger described Arobieke as a danger to young men, adding that his behavior was both strange and obsessive. Even behind bars, reports of Aki's peculiar conduct continued. Years later, a court heard that fellow inmates had complained of him requesting to measure their biceps using a shoelace. It was also claimed that he was transferred between prisons 14 times, though he maintained that these moves were due to unfounded allegations. In 2006, after serving 2 years and 10 months of his sentence, Akinwale Arobieke was released from prison and was issued a sexual offenses prevention order by the court. Introduced under the 2003 Sexual Offenses Act, SOPOs were designed to address persistent, low-level nuisance behaviors, similar to anti-social behavior orders. Though civil in nature, breaching a SOPO is a criminal offense with penalties of up to 5 years in prison. Arobieke's SOPO contained a long list of restrictions. He was banned from touching, measuring, or feeling muscles, and from asking people to perform squat exercises in public, touching muscles in private without consent, loitering around or entering gyms and sports clubs, conversing with anyone under 18 intentionally, entering schools or universities without permission, traveling in any vehicle other than a taxi, leaving Merseyside without police approval, and entering St. Helens, Warrington, or Widnes without prior permission. In a 2008 court hearing, Arobieke openly admitted to having an unusual interest in muscles, the development of muscles, and the potential of young men to improve their physique. He confessed that what began as an exercise routine had gotten out of hand and turned into an obsession. In April 2009, he was jailed once again for breaching his sexual offenses prevention order. Liverpool Crown Court heard that he had approached a 17-year-old in Birkenhead, attempting to touch the boy's bicep, which left the teenager feeling frightened and sick. The following year, he received an additional 2.5-year sentence for a similar incident involving a boy in Llandudno, North Wales. Defending himself in court, Arobieke claimed he was the target of malicious false reports, stating that police regularly received calls alleging his presence in various locations across the country, even when he was behind bars. After his sentence, Arobieke began finding more success in court. In August 2013, he was acquitted of SOPO breach charges, claiming he was a victim of a modern-day witch hunt. Another case collapsed in October over issues with an officer's conduct. However, in 2015, he was found guilty of breaching his SOPO again, after asking a student to measure his bicep on a train. In May 2016, a Manchester judge lifted Arobieke's sexual offences prevention order, which had banned him from touching or measuring muscles. Arobieke argued his interest was not sexual, and the judge noted that recent complaints did not suggest harassment or intimidation. The judge suspended his sentence for a prior incident, but warned that any future misconduct would bring him back to court. Referencing the tragic case of Gary Kelly, the judge acknowledged that the stigma of Kelly's death still hung over him. In response, Arobieke expressed his regret, saying, "It's not nice in any way, shape, or form to be involved in the death of another human being. I want to bring my profile down. I don't think the issue is me as a person. I think the issue is me as a profile." But lowering Akinwale Arobieke's public profile is no simple task. His notoriety has been immortalized in banners, websites, and memes. In Liverpool, one bar even offers a cocktail called the Purple Aki punch, made with gold and dark rum, Cointreau, grenadine, and various tropical juices. At a gym in Birkenhead, a life-sized cardboard cutout of Arobieke's face points a finger with the words, membership's due at the base, a joke that's immediately understood by locals. Even to this day, Aki is still not well received by everyone in Liverpool, as shown in a disturbing incident caught on video in October 2021. In the footage, a group of youths targets a man believed to be Akinwale Arobieke, launching fireworks directly at him as he stands on a street corner. Sparks shower him, and one firework appears to strike him in the head. As the fireworks explode dangerously close, a voice from the hooded gang shouts, "Get out of the area, lad," making their intentions clear. The video underscores the level of hostility and mockery Arobieke still faces, with some individuals seeing him as an unwelcome figure in the community, rather than a man trying to keep a low profile. Purple Aki leaves behind a complex legacy, one that blends reality with myth. To some, he remains an unsettling figure who once prowled Liverpool and the surrounding areas with an obsessive interest in young men's muscles. Many see him as a creep and a predator who loves to feel up young boys. To others, he's become an urban legend, a character transformed by rumor, exaggeration, and internet memes into a near-mythical boogeyman. Over the years, his presence has lingered as both a source of fear and fascination. The stories surrounding him have circulated through playgrounds, pubs, and social media, keeping his name alive even as the truth behind them fades. Aki's reputation, rightly or wrongly, has been cemented as part of Liverpool's folklore, a warning and a curiosity in equal measure. Every city has its shadowed legends, its own lurking boogeyman. But in Liverpool, everyone already knows his name, Purple Aki. Thanks for watching. If you found this exploration into Aki's story compelling, consider subscribing to Dark Sleuth Secrets to stay connected for more deep dives into figures who straddle the line between reality and legend. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you see him as a real threat or just an urban myth? Do you have any stories to share about Purple Aki? Let's hear them. And until next time, stay curious and keep sleuthing.